Hello everybody. Now, in this video, I want to, this is part 2 of my mini-series on the RaenonX calculator and how to properly use it. In this part, I'm going to discuss the production comparison settings, but for both production comparison and team analysis, you really have to have an understanding of the settings. This little button right here has a large power, has a ton of potential. So, you go into it, you got energy settings. First, you set your sleep schedule. I recommend that you have all these settings attuned properly to get the right numbers on things, because this is where you account for what your playstyle is and what you have available to you. So, this is arguably one of the more important tabs. Sleep schedule is going to, you just log when you typically sleep. And if you do split sleep sessions, I typically only do one sleep session from like 11 p.m. to about, I usually put in like 8 a.m. Even though that's a 9-hour sleep session, technically 8.5 hours, I find this to be a bit more realistic just for estimating how long I tend to actually put the Pokemon to sleep. And then for skill recovery, this is where you log your energy for everyone procs. There isn't really a good way to do this if you're using energizing cheer. You can just take the number of procs and divide by 5, since it's like going to be procking roughly that amount on each Pokemon. But this is the value of the skill, and this is how many times the skill procs per day. So 18.1 is a level 9 skill, or level 6 skill, sorry. 18.1 is a level 6 skill. If you're getting like 3 procs a day, then you put it there. But if you want to know what number to do in this, you can always go to the... You can find that by going to the skills or main skills, and then just clicking here on the, where is it? Energy for everyone skill. And then you just get those numbers here, and you just pull them for a setting. If you want to set it here while you're in this tab, then that makes things a little bit easier. You can take a look at it with ease. And then yeah, so getting back into the settings, that's how you determine that. I typically tend to go for conservative because I think it's better to undershoot things than to overshoot things. But realistically, the way that energy impacts, simply put, is if you get them earlier procs in the day, then energy is going to be better than if you get them spaced out evenly across the day. So I think conservative is a more accurate analysis of how things are going to be, so I usually tend to put it there. But if you want to be a bit more optimistic, then you can go for optimistic. This button is if you just want to like evaluate based off of your Pokemon are always at 100% energy. There are useful things for that, but overall I tend to avoid this button. And then cooking schedule. Overall, you can put in when you're making your meals each day, but I find that this makes very minimal impact on the numbers of like what modifiers you get for energy per day. So you can put them in here, but I wouldn't worry too much about making sure this is super fine-tuned because, well, meals, I think at their best they give what, 5% energy back to your team. That's if you're doing terrible in terms of meal or energy optimization. So most of the time you're just getting 1% energy back, so this doesn't make much of a difference anyway. I wouldn't bother with it. Cooking. Here's where you set your meals overall. I personally don't like using this that much. Aside from adjusting your pot capacity, that can be important for certain things. Every time you level up the pot, just change it to whatever it is. There's also a bottomless pot setting, which can be kind of useful for just getting theoretical things and evaluating certain teams, but overall I don't like to use that because I find it to be more accurate to actually gauge the pot capacity, because then it actually properly applies to the team how many ingredients can actually be used in a day. It doesn't overvalue ingredient specialists, which it may do if you have this set to bottomless or you have this set too high. And it does take into account good camp tickets, so you don't need to adjust this based off of if you're using good camp ticket or not. And then here's where you can also tell it the procs per day from any Pokemon that has like an ingredient, a pot expansion main skill. You can say, okay, I get 1 proc per day of a level 5, or let's say it's I don't even know if the skill can increase only 3, but let's say I get 2 procs per day of that, then it's going to take that into account. It's also kind of useful to adjust which ingredients you have unlocked. So, like, a lot of accounts will be looking like this late into the game, but let's say you only have a few. Let's say you're missing coffee because you haven't been to, or corn because you haven't been to Lake Gaines Islands yet. Let's say you haven't unlocked leeks because it's only available at level 30, and tails can be kind of difficult too. Then what this does is it evaluates for the skill where it pulls random ingredients. It'll only use those ingredients that are here for that skill then, which will change the value of that main skill. So, on meal coverage basis, meal or ingredient, don't even worry about that. Set it to whatever you want. I tend to like it on meal, but I don't even want to try and describe what it is because the difference is so minor. It's not going to impact your output per day. Let's put it that way. Here's where you can put in island percent. This is useful for gauging. If you're trying to estimate how much you're going to produce in a week, then this is very useful and very, very important. But if you're trying to compare two different team options, both will be impacted equally by this since it is a flat modifier that gets added onto the end after every calculation. So overall, this modifier, you can avoid using it if you're making the comparisons every time, but if you want to try and figure out using team analysis how much you're going to be producing, then this is important. Multiplier, I recommend don't touch this. Basically, you just get an overall percent bonus to everything. I find that very rarely is there something happening where you just need a flat bonus that isn't accounted for in other ways in the thing. I never use this functionality. Event bonus is where you account for events. If base just means there are no event modifiers being applied, default is going to give you whatever event is active that week. So as you can see, there's no event active this week, so all these are set to whatever the base would be. So there's no difference functionally between these. And then in custom, you can set something special for whatever they are. Typically speaking, there aren't any things that change berry count. I'd be surprised if they did a berry count one, but the RaenonX team has included it just in case it ever gets added. I think they already had the functionality for ingredient count to be added, so then they just copied the coding over, if I had to guess, and that's the only reason why it exists. This is for, and then these three are just for base, like, if there's an event happening where cooking value is increased by 1.5, then you can just type that, input that here to evaluate for that particular event. And then here you can select, like, oh, this Pokemon or they're boosting ice types to have 1.5 times skill trigger rate for the week of this event, which in this case is the holiday event. Thematic, it's coming up here soon. This is what we would put in if we wanted to do the holiday event. We'd say ice types only, and then we'd specify the exact numbers. If it was during the event, we could just hit default and it will auto-populate this setting. But overall, yeah. Now, if you don't have any type selected, then it just applies to all types. So that is another way to worry about that. Now, Go++. This one doesn't make too big of an impact, but if you are somebody who has a Go++, I don't think you can actually... I guess this is a premium feature. Oh, wait, no. You have to enable it. And then you can just tell it what level your Nightcap Pikachu is at. And then how many Pokestops you spend per day in Pokemon Go. I personally... I use this because I have it. I don't play Pokemon Go, though, so this stays at 0. But I believe mine's level is at, like, 9. But you do have to enable it or disable it right there. Overall, like I said, this isn't going to be that useful for most things, but if you are trying to predict your team's output in a week, this is another way that you contribute to your team every week if you have the Go++. So, app info, just some data, and then other modifiers. Good camp ticket is one of the most important modifiers, and then also skill rate mode, I recommend to keep it on. It includes pity proc. This just basically means that it includes the pity procs from skill specialists. It can evaluate them a bit more accurately. And then for inventory mode, I recommend normal, which means it takes into account how long you're sleeping. It's assuming that you're collecting always if you don't have the premium pass. Premium subscription is required if you want to adjust this setting here. which is how often you're collecting. If you have it set to normal, then it assumes that you're constantly collecting and their inventory will never be full. Aside from, it assumes that you won't be collecting while you're asleep. If you want to specify that your berry specialist always sneaky snack, you can set that as well. If you want to say that they have an infinite inventory, so you don't worry about inventory at all because you're collecting through the night, that's another setting as well. You can also say everything's always sneaky snacking, but I don't know why you would do that on ingredient specialist or skill specialist, because that'd be a terrible decision. So, pretty much you're looking at this or this are like the two main, maybe infinite. But yeah. So that's our settings. And now let's actually get into the production comparison. So, I think this is the most valuable tool for rating a Pokemon on an individual basis. It does miss some things, and yeah, I will get into that. I recommend overriding if you can and fine-tuning your settings here. If you don't have the premium subscription, then you are going to have to fine-tune the settings in here every time instead of being able to override. But then, realistically, you just tell it what island you're on, and then it'll auto-populate the island % bonus based off of your settings. And it'll auto-populate the favored berry for the week there as well. If there's an event happening where the berries are randomized at an island, in the past they didn't have it automatically so that you could oh, I guess they actually have it now that you can change the berry type. So, let's say they have an event and you get this, then you are able to do that. It used to be locked, but they changed that since there was the Suicune event, changing things at Cyan and Lapis. If you're at green grass, it auto-populates to nothing. And then you can select whatever your 3 favorite berries are. But, yeah. So now, you can use it to predict 3 things. Now, there are a couple things to evaluate when you're making comparisons. And let's just get into that. So, let's say we want to compare berry specialists. Let's bring in Pichus. Let's say I make one Pichu just have, I don't know, berry fighting S, green fighting M, yada yada yada, random skills. Okay, cool. And then we're gonna pick this nature, naughty, I guess. Cool. You can then use this to then see how different are these Pokemon going to compare at different levels by changing whatever their levels are. So at level 1, this one's obviously better because this one's got a neutral nature, this one doesn't. And you just see that exact number. But really, it's all just about fine-tuning and knowing what levels to pick things at. I like to evaluate at level 60 because it's the current cap of the game. So it's where we're thinking about. You can also adjust for hours slept, and you can change their settings on their inventory based down here. Default is going to use whatever your settings in the settings category is. Normal will be collecting throughout the day, not collecting at night. Always full is sneaky snacking, and infinite implies that you're always collecting in a way that you're never going to hit sneaky snacking cap. And yeah, you can also evolve it. It'll auto-update the carry capacity if you evolve it. You can adjust it down, though, if the Pokemon is caught fully evolved or something of that sort. So, it's very, very powerful, but a few weaknesses of it. It doesn't really calculate health bonus very well in my past with it. Which is why I think, especially when dealing with health bonus Pokemon, you need to use the team analysis functionality, but that's a lot more complicated. There's a lot more factors to play in. But overall, this is very powerful, and I think the best use case for it is really getting an idea of how many ingredients they're going to be producing. Because the Rate My Pokemon functionality is going to tell you how they compare at what they are doing overall. It's not going to tell you every aspect of their production. And sometimes you're looking for something that you, like, sometimes it's useful for predicting, like, oh, this guy at level 60 is going to produce 39 apples a day. 39 apples a day may be enough to cross you over a threshold for meal planning or something. So it may be better for consideration than, let's say, if this one had double ginger. Let's say on a team you needed the apples. Then this one, despite having significant significantly weaker berries and being overall worse, if you need the apples, then this one might be the better choice. So I think for getting the full picture, this one is better, and there's a lot that I could go into with this, and honestly, okay, I guess I'll talk about what each one of these numbers means. The first one is their frequency. That's how long it takes for them to collect one help, assuming they are on 0 energy, if I'm correct. Yes, that is correct. This is the modifier that the calculator is applying to their productivity across the day, or the average modifiers based off their energy levels. So if I gave this one an energy recovery down nature, you'd see a difference between these two, or an energy recovery up. Let's say it's got a relaxed nature. You can see that the modifiers here are bigger than the modifiers here because this one's getting more energy throughout the day. So then this one here is the time it takes to full pack. So based off their inventory size, we'll see this one has inventory up M. So here's their inventory size at whatever they are at. If you adjust the hours slept with, then the ribbons will give them more inventory as well. So this goes up. This is how long, based off that Pokemon's frequency, it is expected during that sleep session before they start sneaky snacking. And if you split your sleep sessions, then this is where it would do for the second sleep session as well. So you can see that this one has a much shorter time before it starts sneaky snacking than this one, which is to be expected with this one having a much larger inventory. This number here is the actual berry output, and as you can see, the calculator very nicely highlights whichever specialty you should be looking at for that Pokemon, because these guys are berry specialists, so it highlights the berries. If I put a ingredient specialist in here, you'll see that it highlights the yellow, the ingredients, and if I load in a skill specialist, you'll see that it very nicely highlights the skill bar. So this is ingredient output. This is their current ingredient rate. So you can see this one over here has ingredient finding M at level 25. It's got a 30.46% ingredient rate instead of just a 22.4 on this one. This is their ingredient output per day and the value of those ingredients. And then down here is their skills. Now this is how many times it'll proc per day. This is the value of that expected skill output. Some skills won't have an expected value because either it's too complicated to properly evaluate, or it contributes in other ways, like energy recovery skills aren't going to have any value listed. If I pull in something like Eradicate, you can see that guy. Now, interestingly, the Eradicate's main skill is accounted for because it takes into account that it's proccing to give itself energy back, so it's got higher energy recovery modifiers than the neutral Raichu, because it does gain back some energy, but as you can see, there's no strength evaluated for here. I know it also does nothing to evaluate Metronome as well, and there are a few skills that are like that. But then, and then down here, I do have the Golda Cup as well. This is the chance after sleep session 1. This is the percent chance of you not having a skill proc after waking up. This can be impacted by a multitude of things. Overall, primarily inventory is going to be a big one. Speed may play a role if their inventory capacity is never being met. Like, let's say if this was, instead of inventory M, it was inventory L. And then, let's say it had 2,000 hours slept with. Will it be... Okay, it still does fill the inventory. Jeez. Let's give them a speed down nature. Okay, it's still filling the inventory. Let's say that we only sleep until 5 a.m. Okay, you can see here that now its inventory never fills. So because of that, speed may actually play a role because it's actually getting more procs at night. Usually speed doesn't really change it that much. But inventory, skill trigger percent chance, and their speed may play a role. Additionally, this number right here, I forgot to mention, 3.47% versus 2.94%. That is their current skill proc rate, so the chance of a skill to proc a skill. And then this number down here is overall only going to matter on Pokemon that have the skill Extra Tasty Chance S in this evaluation mode, in the production comparison, because this is the modifier. The first one is your percent chance to crit overall across the week. So the average accounting for Sundays. And this modifier here is the percent value, or the modifier that they're applying to ingredient strength to accommodate for crits. Now, no Pokemon when you're evaluating them individually is going to have any modification there, unless they themselves carry that skill. So if I bring in a Dedenne, then you can see that it's going to have a higher modifier there because it itself is increasing the tasty chance. But if we're in team analysis, then it'll apply that modifier to the whole team, and it's just accounting for it there. So, and now with the Golduck, I do want to mention this. It accounts for, after sleep session 1, it tells you the odds of rolling just one skill proc. Oh, I just realized. They've actually changed this since the last time that I thought through this. Sorry, I misinformed earlier. This number is not the odds of you not getting a skill proc, it is the odds of you getting a skill proc upon waking up. That is important. Because here, this is the odds of you getting one skill proc upon waking up, and this is the odds of you getting 2 skill procs upon waking up. And that's really what it means. If I was to put in a second sleep session, say from that time to that time, then it would also have the numbers for that as well. So, that's really all that it takes to read this stuff. I know it's a lot of information, and getting the hang of this and applying them to the greater context of the game can be very, very difficult and definitely has a learning curve. But I encourage you to just toy around with it and putting your Pokemon into it. Also, something that I forgot to mention in the last video, you can also save your Pokemon, and I highly recommend you do so. The way that you do it in the Rate My Pokemon feature, I already had a tab open with it. Let's say I had a Vaporeon and I wanted to save it. Let's say it was like that. I don't know. If I want to save it in this feature, you click this little button. And then... wait. At least I'm pretty sure it's that button, isn't it? Oh, yeah. And then you click that button to finalize it. It'll, like, ask you to input more information. You just look over the information, then click that button to actually export it. If you're in production comparison and you're evaluating Pokemon, say a Wigglytuff and it's got, like, I don't know, that, then you can click this button, export Pokebox, and it just sends it. And then you'll see that in your Pokemon box, they are both saved. So then they can come up here. This is a very useful feature, and I will be going over it later of how to use the Pokemon box to its full potential as well. But what's very important about that is now that you have them saved, instead of using this feature to bring in the Pokemon, you can just click this one, and it'll load up that one with its subskills and nature already accounted for, and at the level that it is saved at in your Pokemon box. So tracking your Pokemon box in here is very useful, which is why I recommend you make an account and sign in. And yeah, so if you have enjoyed the video and you learned something, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. As always, I thank you guys for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Goodbye now.